Welcome to the Insight Meditation community of Charlottesville, Virginia. You can find all of our program offerings and information about our Sangha at www.imeditation.org. We meet weekly on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, currently on the Zoom platform for meditation and a Dharma talk given by one of our teachers. We also meet daily at noon Eastern Time on Zoom for sitting practice. We hope you can join us.
This is Insight Meditation, Community of Charlottesville. My name is Jeanne van Gemert. So I'm going to start with lighting the candle. This is both to light the way forward and to bring with us what we want to remember, to pay attention to. That we're always in a pivot position. We're taking from the past to the present, going ahead to the future. Things that we want to bring with us are acknowledgement for these teachings that have been so generously passed along to us. Also acknowledging our ancestors, facing the hardships that brought them to this new country, whenever they came. And also acknowledging the indigenous people who lived on this land, the Monacan Nation. And tonight I'd like to acknowledge the millions of humans, animals, livestock, plants and trees suffering with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have no idea what life can be like living in a land deprived of the blessing of peace. Maureen Dowd continues, an empire can't be glued back with the blood of innocence. So if we could just have a moment of silence. Thank you. And before we start, please take some time to think about and write down. You won't need to share this unless you choose, so this is just for yourself. Write down something you're worried about, anxious about, or aggravated about. If you can't think of anything, think about your neighbors, and if one of them is doing something that irritates you. So in any of those categories, something you're worried about, anxious about, aggravated about, or simply irritated about. Have it be pretty mild, don't go for something huge. Okay, do people have something? Okay. So when I lit the candle and acknowledged the teachings, ancestors, Native people, and those suffering, this is all information we are bringing into our present. Again, we're pivoting and choosing to bring this forward with us into the future. At this point, it's helpful to employ discernment. What do we want to bring forward with us? And of course, we don't want to bring any extra baggage. Current news with Monacan Nation is that their 2,600 descendants is that the James River Water Authority will not build a water pump station and pipeline on their sacred site, Raswick. The Water Authority had other alternatives, but purchased this land for cheap without informing the Monacan Nation they had done so for about a year. It took 12,000 individuals and organizations to win this lawsuit for the Monacans. The tribal chief said sacred land, burial grounds, and sacred stories needed to be preserved to make a strong society. And their lawyers said that citizen volunteers proved indispensable. And tonight, citizen volunteers from IMC and elsewhere are attending an impact meeting to provide better resources for all members of our city. And for the last few months, IMCC and everyone else has been working with the discernment of stories, trying to make sense of how so many people, nationally and locally, can have so many different perspectives about the same stories. We'd also like to know what stories are helpful as we constantly pivot to bring forward. It's really a matter of perception, of how we perceive the story. We can think, oh, that's not hard, it's pretty straightforward. We take in information through our sense gates, our eyes, ears, touch, smell, body sensations, and our mind. Our mind is designed to discern what information, what stories are important, to help us navigate in the world, and also to make meaning. Like simply and basically, who and what can I trust and not trust? Am I secure? What brings me comfort or suffering? As our brains evolved and got larger, it seems this making meaning function got larger and more elaborate. And so our perceptions are more complicated. Into our perception of something, we fold in, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, our memories, associations, our past experiences, our learning. And pretty soon, as we dwell on things, they become the shape of our mind and the shape of our world. It's very complicated and different for each of us. It starts out simply as our eye sees an object moving through the air. That's the information, the sensory input. But we don't stop there. Next, we perceive it's a bird. We don't stop there. We continue. It's a starling, unpleasant. They eat all our crops, gluttons at the bird feeder. The songbirds won't have enough food to eat. When our thoughts are continuing like this, we say our thoughts are proliferating. And we happen to like it when that happens. In Pali, the word for proliferation is papañca. Our perception leads to our thinking. The trouble is, our perceptions can be incorrect, and that will result in incorrect meanings. A note on this is that this happens frequently. And because we like our proliferations, they can run in many directions. Because of our unique past experiences, associations, and memories, our perceptions and their proliferations can be very different from each other's. One person looks at a crowded room and sees many opportunities for connection. Another looks at the same crowded room and is overwhelmed with social anxiety. The Buddha says what one perceives, one thinks about. What one thinks about, that one mentally proliferates. So the territory from sensory input to perception to proliferation is the territory we want to tease apart. We can see the crowded room, but then there's the decision whether to enter it or not. Mindfulness can help us sever the links between perception and past emotional, psychological baggage that may have led to patterns of distress. This is the moment of discerning whether our perceptions, our pleasant, unpleasant, past memories, associations, experiences, are really true or not necessarily true. We pause at the doorway of the crowded room. We're very clear that our thinking is going to influence our behavior. Are we going into the room or not? I love the questions around discernment. Is it true? Is it really true? What if the opposite were true? How do I know what's true right now in this moment? Do I want to take a risk? Do I want to risk an experiment with my thinking? The Buddha suggested that one way to evaluate your perceptions is to discern whether it leads to skillful or unskillful qualities in your mind. What patterns does it set up? We can set up wholesome upward spirals or unwholesome downward ones. And then our patterns of thinking can trap us. We can easily be the victim of these patterns. They can be our prison. These patterns can lead to distress and distortion. Or we can choose to discern the perception. William Blake said, if the doors of perception are cleansed, the world appears as it is, infinite. Let me say that again. If the doors of perception are cleansed, the world appears as it is, infinite. An example of how a pattern can trap us is that as we stand in the doorway, there might be proliferation of our thinking, our papañca. I might be saying to myself, if I go in, there's bound to be another woman wearing the same dress as I am, and I'll be embarrassed. Or, there's Sally. She never talked to me in high school, and I'm sure she won't now. Clearly, these are not helpful thoughts. Papañca can be like our home entertainment center. What qualities do you want your programs to be? A few weeks ago, Mary Louise gave a great example of how we love to proliferate or create papañca. A man had a peacock, says playwright Tom Stoppard. And the man was shaving one morning. In the mirror, he sees that the peacock has jumped off the garden wall to the other side. So the man drops his razor, races outside just as the bird is reaching the highway, and he starts running. The man runs after him, does eventually catch him, puts the peacock under his arm, and starts walking home. In the meantime, many cars have passed. Seeing a man dressed only in pajama bottoms, bare feet, foam on his face, carrying a peacock under his arm. The scene is ripe for papañca. Just pause a minute and let yourself be amused. What stories come up if you saw that scene? Maybe he lost a bet. His girlfriend threw him out. He's a pilgrim. Who knows? And let's be kind to ourselves for all the misperceptions we have, especially when we're kids. We were all just trying to make meaning and only had a child's mind to work with. The meditation teacher, Christina Feldman, whose lecture on papañcas was very helpful to me, says that whenever perception is distorted, papañca will be generated. So an example of that is the person standing in the doorway overcome by anxiety is likely to have a distorted perception. Some past experience or association probably happened. The second is whatever perception is not distorted, papañca will not be generated. Whatever perception is not aligned with the way things actually are, stories are fueled. An example of that will be the story about the man with the peacock. That got fueled because it was out of context, not aligned. Papañca also fuels distorted perception in closed feedback loops. An example of this was the self-talk about someone wearing the same dress. It's repeated reactivity from a long time ago. And what distorts perception? It happens when there isn't alignment with the way things actually are. The Buddha pointed to four threads of papañca. The first is the craving-based ones. It's our desire for the perfect vacation, the perfect meal, the most pleasant memories, having wonderful fun. You might say, what's wrong with this? It seems harmless. And it is, in a way. The problem is that if we easily get lost in fantasy, we'll get lost in our bad stories as well. The second is fear or anxiety-based papañca. Anxiety about our health, being out of control, having illness, making mistakes. The third is view-based papañca, the views we hold about life. We might be holding them too tightly. We have views about politics, things that are social, race, class, opinions, beliefs. Clinging tightly to these views creates a strong sense of self and other. The fourth is mana, or the story of me. The narratives we tell about who we are, our ambitions, our hopes, the sense of I. So let's go back for a minute and read what you wrote down. Something you were worried about, or anxious, or aggravated, or irritated about. Do you think what you wrote about is proliferation? And if so, which sort is it? Is it about craving? 2 was fear or anxiety. 3, view-based. Or 4, based around yourself. It's helpful to investigate what it is, because then we have the opportunity to reduce both the distress and the distortion. We have the capacity to change the perceptions that aren't working so well. In fact, we can retrain our perceptions. We might as well use them in the service of our freedom. We're always standing in the doorway. We can remember William Blake. Or maybe this is the real meaning of Rumi's poem. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the 2 worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. Okay, well, thank you so much. We can close with a little heart practice. Thank you so much for being here. We're still doing noon Zooms. We'll meet again next Tuesday night. And let's settle back into a little meditation. with wishes, with good wishes for ourselves and others. May I and all beings be filled with compassion and loving kindness. May we be able to stay open, to be in communication with our fellow beings. To not be so much about self and other. May we all treasure life. May I and all beings be happy, be healthy, have justice, be safe, and may there be peace. May there be peace.